Mike, we're gonna keep it simple today. We back doing some more linebackers. We got Zaven Collins, which I'm excited to go over today. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. We had a very exciting player, no question on film. I'd say one of the more unique guys that we've watched. So far, everybody's been sort of the smaller, quicker linebacker. Then you get into Zaven Collins, who's 6'4", 259 pounds, yet doesn't necessarily play like it either. He's not some just big, stiff guy. But before we get into that in the grade, Mike, obviously the sort of statistics, he has a larger sample size than most of the guys that we've seen to this point. Is that certainly a positive for you?
Absolutely. And you're not saying, if I see 4 years, it's a little bit questionable. Maybe you just outlasted some of your peers when we're looking at prospects. But no, I think 3 years, you see quality production all 3 years. Even that freshman season where you see 9.5, tackles for loss, sack and a half, an interception, like all that. That I like seeing that. Like right out of the bat, he was productive. Absolutely, I like the large sample size. You kind of know what you're getting, and you kind of see where his progression is taken him.
And are you worried about the fact that he played at a smaller school? I know that was one thing kind of getting into the films. We're watching him against maybe an SMU opposed to an LSU, right? Do you think that playing at Tulsa gives you any sort of hesitancy in drafting him, or not particularly based off the skills he showed?
Definite concern. I think knock him a little bit, but I think he's shown if he had this kind of production at an LSU or an SEC school or even a Big Ten school, I think he'd be on people's radars a little bit more than he has been. Like right now, where he's in the conversation, I'm not saying this we're grading him yet, but he's kind of in that early second. Sometimes you see him sneak into the first. So with really quality production. So I think it is a concern, but you definitely take that in consideration when watching film. But it's really dependent on what you see on film, and then you kind of judge the talent he's playing against.
No, I most certainly agree with that. And I know sometimes it is a little bit tougher because, when you're trying to diagnose, let's say block shedding, right? Now we're watching it against an SMU guard, and those college guards aren't what you're going to see in the NFL. So it is a little bit tougher. But I still think, regardless, sort of at his size, at his athleticism, he graded fairly well in every category. Then first things first, obviously, in terms of range, you can see 13.25. I felt like, obviously, he wasn't necessarily to the caliber of, say, Micah or Owusu, but considering he's 259 pounds, it was still certainly impressive to see him making plays. Definitely between the hashes, between the numbers, maybe not sideline to sideline, but pretty dang close, right? Otherwise, in terms of coverage skills, I know this is an interesting area because you see the interception totals that he had, right, for this junior season. And I feel like some people have sort of taken that to an extreme and they're acting like he's some great coverage linebacker. Well, if he drops in coverage 250 snaps and you're only basing your opinion on his skills off of 4 of them, he could have let up 246 touchdowns technically, and you wouldn't even know, right? I'm not saying that he obviously did. He was solid in coverage, but I think the 4 interceptions is kind of skewing people to think he's a 14, 15, when to me he was more of a 12-5, sort of in that range. He was solid, particularly in zone, but I definitely wouldn't want him manned up against Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey, by example. Otherwise, I thought his IQ and awareness was solid. Nothing crazy. He wasn't the most instinctual guy. But once he did get a read, he was most certainly attacking. Like Micah sometimes took him a little bit longer to diagnose, but he could get away with it with that athleticism. Zaven, he's not quite the athlete of those guys, as you can kind of see in the quickness and change of direction grade, as well as the general athleticism. So Mike, overall, came out to an 81 for me, raw grade. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree, disagree? Are you higher, lower? Where are you at?
Like most, I agree with for the most part, the overall grade probably, skew some points here and there. I just athleticism seems a little high, but obviously it's not a big portion. But and part of that might just come coming off of doing Micah Owosu. He's definitely not the same athlete, and that definitely sticks out in film. But where he lacks in that, I think he has strength that's it shows on film quite substantially compared to those two. And that's why I think if you're looking for, a middle linebacker, I think he might be the most just, traditional fit at that position. So a lot of times when talking about linebackers, they use the term enforcer. Out of any of the linebackers we've done so far, by far he has that ability to be that enforcer, really uh, be that kind of centerpiece in the middle of that defense. But I think overall the grade's good. And I think it shows, not quite the athlete of some of the other linebackers we've looked at, but he makes up for it in different areas. But overall, probably not the same caliber of a playmaker as other linebackers we've taken a look at so far.
No, most certainly. I know in terms of the athleticism, I wanted to mention the pro day numbers actually on the last side. Kind of forgot about him. Ran a 4.67 40-yard dash, 35-inch vert, and 122-inch broad. So he's most certainly an explosive guy for his size. But again, compared to those guys who he has 20 to 40 pounds on, it is tough to sort of evaluate him in that regard. I did notice I kind of missed block shedding as a category when I was just going through him. That actually is probably his best category, right? In terms of setting a dominant edge, just taking on blockers at the second level, whether it's a climbing guard, a climbing tackle, just very solid, right? He's by far and away the most physical player that we've watched at this point. Like Mike said, he's an enforcer. I most certainly agree with that. Unlike the other guys where, you can run at them and they're going to try and maybe evade your block, he's going to just take it head on and force you to either pick a gap or, take another gap that you maybe didn't want to take, cut back, those sort of things. I saw he did a very good job in that regard as an in-the-box run defender, certainly better than the other guys we've seen. So, Mike, you said you agree with the grade for the most part. As we get onto the big board, what you're going to see is, with the position premium, which is 3.5%. Actually, I did say it was 3 in the Owusu video. Apologies if anybody was doing the math and, counting the numbers there, that we were wrong. But no, 81 comes out added in the 3.5% of his own grade reimbursed in itself, 83.84. That has him for me at the bottom of the first round, at least to this point. Mike, agree with that overall, or do you think he is sort of towards the top of the second or potentially even higher?
No, I think that's right where he belongs. If you went a little, again, I think he's the kind of player, if you have a really good, defense surrounding him, even if you don't, to be honest, I feel like the other two linebackers that we have above him, Parsons and Owosu, might be a little bit more dependent on having, playmakers or, D linemen in front of him. I think he could do more for, even a mediocre defense. I think he could be that centerpiece and really maybe bring some of that together. So, no, I think end of the first round is right where I would grade him. But if he went a little bit earlier, I wouldn't be mad if he went a little bit later. I think, a player, a team probably got a really good player in this draft.
No, I definitely agree. If you can get him later than this, I would say you got some certainly good value as long as you're using them in the correct way, which I guess brings me on to my next point. What way do you think he needs to be used, Mike? Obviously, in that SMU game, for example, they were using him off the edge as sort of a 3-4 outside linebacker, and he was bending an edge quite well. I've seen people think he fits best there. Obviously, I've seen people say, oh, he should be a 4-3 Sam, a 3-4 middle that's just going to play downhill. Where do you think he sort of fits best? I know I think you could use him in a variety of roles, but what's the best fit in your opinion?
Yeah, and I think all of those. I think he actually offers quite a bit of versatility. For me, it's just middle linebacker, either in a 3-4 or a 4-3, to be honest. I think that Mike position. But I also think you brought up a good comp for him. It might sound a little high, but you brought up Anthony Barr, and he does have a lot of similarities in his gameplay. So using him as that 3-4 outside linebacker that drops back a little bit more often than probably, your average pass rusher. I think that might be a really good position for him. So it's hard to say. I kind of see him as a Mike because I think he has that ability to play the run better than at least any other linebacker we've seen so far. But he did really look good off the edges, kind of a little bit more playmaking 3-4 outside linebacker. So I wouldn't be mad there either.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that he was rushing the passer necessarily as much as a guy like Barr was back in college at UCLA. But I think that when he was doing it, he was effective to the point that maybe he definitely wouldn't be my primary pass rusher at the next level. But, you have 2, 3, 4 outside linebackers. That means most plays you're going to be dropping one back in coverage. So I think he could more so be that guy that you're using occasionally off the edge, and letting him set the edge against tight ends, considering he's just outside that 4 technique. I think that he could do a very good job there in that regard. And then you see sort of that ability to play backwards in coverage manifest at that role as well. But you're not having him drop way back as you would necessarily as a Mike, right? He'd be on the line of scrimmage playing more of those flat zones opposed to potentially playing 10 to 15 yards back up the middle. Well, I don't know. I think that he's definitely a versatile guy. I don't think that there's necessarily any teams who should just have him crossed off their board, because I do think pretty much anybody could use a linebacker like this in some capacity, right? But I think at that point just becomes, then when are you willing to take a chance on him? I mean, he's probably not the most refined linebacker in terms of his technique, but I do feel like, compared to the other guys here, he might be the easiest plug and play day one in terms of just what he does well, because he is such a physical freak. He is such a downhill attacker, and he can play a little bit of coverage as well. So Mike, you agree with that? You think this is a good spot on the big board. Do you have any teams in mind? Like we said, he can probably go anywhere. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand. Anybody at the end of the first round that you think he fits with well, or no, you think just anybody?
I think any team, kind of as you said, but I don't think any team should have him crossed off their board. I think he has, a spot that can, benefit any team in any kind of defense that you're going to be running. But I think there is one that sticks out at the end of the first. I think it's a team that's liked big body, off-ball linebackers, especially Mike's, maybe a little bit lacking in athleticism. And I think he offers more than what they've had previously. It'd be the Green Bay Packers. I think behind that front four, Kenny Clark, Bolta Smith, Rashawn Gary, I think him playing behind that might be a really nasty combo. So I think he can clean up whatever they leave, whatever makes it to that, secondary position. So I think that might be a really good spot for him.
No, I certainly agree. I think that there's very few matches that are sort of made like that. And you look at their inside linebacker core ever since they got rid of Blake Martinez, they really haven't had anybody step up there. And when you're running a 3-4 and have two of them, I think a guy like Zaven that can do a variety of skills to the level that he can would fit towards the end of the first round. But all in all, solid player, right? I know we usually don't go into fits and comps and whatnot, but I felt like Zaven was a unique enough guy to where, hey, he kind of looked like Anthony Barr. Hey, he maybe fits in Green Bay. It is what it is. Obviously, with that being said, though, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Tell us, what did you think of Zaven? Having watched film on him yourself, did you think he is a round one talent, or would you have him in round two or beyond? Do you think that he potentially should be up higher than Owusu or Micah Parsons? We might think you're a little bit crazy, but hey, we're most certainly up for that discussion. Just put it down below. And last but not least, hit the subscribe button, right? We've been on a roll a little bit lately, gaining quite a few here these last few days. We're at 84. You could be 85, hopefully even 86 by the time this video is posted. So with that being said, Mike, you got anything else or what?
I think we mic'd up and we're micing out. Deuces.
Peace, guys.